This is Africa 24, the channel that puts Africa first. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this edition of The Interview. Today, we are delighted to have with us Mr. Wamkele Mene, the Secretary General of the AfCFTA. With him, we discuss the AfCFTA and its impact on business on the continent. Mr. Wamkele Mene, thank you for honoring our invitation.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. With the AfCFTA set to boost intra-African trade, what specific infrastructure and policy gaps should countries like Cameroon fail to tap the full potential of the AfCFTA?
The infrastructure deficit on our continent is quite significant. Over $130, $140 billion annually is what is required to close that infrastructure deficit. And this is important for trade because if our infrastructure does not support transit of goods, movement of persons, movement of services, we will not be able to meet the overall objectives of ZLECAf. So infrastructure investment is absolutely critical. That said, we do see intensification of efforts to raise more capital to deploy it towards infrastructure projects. Lobito Corridor, for example, is an important priority, not just for Angola, but for the entire Central Africa, the entire Southern Africa region, moving all the way to East Africa. And so infrastructure is absolutely critical. Over the last 10 years, AFDB has invested over $45 billion in infrastructure, that is ports, roads. Since its establishment, AfriximBank has invested over $20 billion in infrastructure. This is very good, but it's not adequate to meet that deficit. It also creates actually an opportunity for the private sector to also invest in Africa's infrastructure. So it's not a challenge specific to a country. It's a challenge for the entire continent. And that's why the African Union has taken a continental approach to deal with this challenge. The Program for Infrastructure Development in Africa, and working and being led by NEPAD. These are very important initiatives, but we have to do more.
Okay, looking at the Russian-Ukraine crisis, supply chains have been disrupted and inflation, that is rising prices. 3 years on, do you think the continent has managed to come out on top?
I think that what's very clear from the Russia-Ukraine crisis as it impacts on Africa, it should compel us as Africans to really reflect on what is it that we should be doing to accelerate our self-sufficiency, whether we are talking about regional value chains, what we just talked about, infrastructure, the fact that we are a net food importer and we were importing grains from Russia, Ukraine, and so that when there's a disruption in that import, the impact on Africa is an upward inflationary pressure, up to 35%, pushing millions and millions of people back into poverty. So the last 3 years should compel us to look at all of the different tools that are at our disposal and to say, but how do we make sure that we are not in this context again? From a trade point of view, trade rules are very important to enable Africa to feed itself. There are countries that have the capacity to export grains, maize to other countries in Africa. But the tariff barriers are high, the non-tariff barriers are high. So trade ministers and ourselves, we have got to go to our heads of states with a solution to how do we solve this problem of food insecurity that is caused by Africa being a net food importer. when we have the food here on our continent. Of course, there are other measures that are required. We talked about infrastructure, but from a trade point of view, we need to accelerate the implementation of the AfCFTA and trading in basic agricultural products.
So China, which is Africa's biggest trading partner, reached $167 billion between January and July 2024. So how can we achieve trade fair between the two entities?
China is a historic development partner to the African Union, and we have very, very strong ties based on shared values of how we see the world, but more importantly, shared values for equality of development and solidarity in that regard. You will be aware that recently China announced duty-free, quota-free market access into the Chinese market from African countries. So we have to look at it from our relationship from a perspective of shared development ambitions. China is a large investor in Africa, as we all know. What we have to work towards now is building Africa's capacity to export to China, to take advantage of this market access opportunity that China is giving to us as a continent. And so I think in the current context of shifting geoeconomic landscapes, we have an opportunity to look at our model of a relationship with China to accelerate its benefits and for us to be able to produce in Africa for export. And then, of course, for China to invest more in productive capacity in Africa. China is already doing that, of course. But given the changes that are taking place, we should accelerate the pace of our developmental relationship.
How is the AfCFTA Secretariat working with financial institutions and local government to ensure that SMEs in Africa can access cross-border financing and market intelligence?
We are working with AfCFTA, which, as you know, is Africa's leading trade finance institution, and they have introduced a number of tools that are intended to make direct interventions for SMEs that seek to trade across borders, and they make these financial facilities available through local banks. The partnership with AfCFTA is very important because the role of ZLECAf is to eliminate these intra-Africa barriers to trade. Where we achieve that objective, the investment that AfCFTA makes becomes even more impactful because the people that they will be investing in will now have a scaled market to access and to take advantage of. So it's a very important relationship. It's also important that we work very closely with commercial banks, particularly those that have an active trade finance portfolio and that have a footprint across the continent. We have to work closely with them too, so that we have a laser focus in reducing the cost of money for people to trade across borders, particularly small medium enterprises and youth entrepreneurs. These are very, very important segments of Africa's economic architecture. And so we've got to place them at the fore of benefiting from ZLECAf. If they don't have the right financial support, then they will not be able to access new markets.
Talking about AfCFTA, George Elombi has been recently elected president of the bank. What do you think about his election?
I think it is a very good choice. I know George, we work closely, and I think it's a good choice. It is very important to have continuity. It is very, very important to have not just continuity of strategy, but continuity of vision. And I believe that his vision is going to take AfCFTA to a higher level, building on the excellent work that Professor Orama did over the last 10 years. I think their partnership is, you can see that it is a partnership of shared values for what kind of an institution AfCFTA should be. So I congratulate George. I think that it is an excellent choice, and I look forward to working with him when he takes over in late September.
So, what are some of the difficulties that await him at the helm of the institution?
Well, some of the challenges we were talking about. So, for example, the cost of infrastructure, the cost of trade finance, and recently the AfCFTA was downgraded by one of the rating institutions. That's going to be a big challenge that lands on his desk. I will say that the downgrading is not justified. I think we all know that. Nonetheless, the reality is that it is something that it's another challenge that he's going to have to deal with as he takes over at the end of September. But I'm very, very confident that that George will rise to the occasion. He's a brilliant lawyer, he's a brilliant banker. He knows the bank very well. He knows the market very well. The market knows him, and I'm sure you saw the market reaction to his election was very, very positive. So I think he will be able to navigate these challenges in these turbulent times.
Mr. Wamkele Mene, thank you for answering Africa's 24 questions. And to our viewers, thank you for watching this program. Stay tuned to Africa 24 English for more news.